December arrives, and with it a strange melancholy that you feel but cannot name. You walk through the decorated streets, observe the bright shop windows, listen to the cheerful songs that echo from all directions, and something inside you resists. It's not anger, not exactly sadness, but a disturbing lucidity that makes you question why everyone around you seems immersed in collective euphoria while you remain on the outside, observing with an almost painful clarity. If you've ever felt this way, if you've ever experienced this sensation of being awake at a party where everyone else sleeps, you are not alone. In fact, you may be experiencing something that Albert Camus, the philosopher of the absurd, would understand profoundly. Christmas, this celebration that should unite hearts and awaken our purest humanity, has transformed into a machine for manufacturing obligatory feelings. And lucid people, those who have developed the capacity to see beyond appearances, feel the weight of this fabrication like a stone in their chest. They walk through festive crowds and perceive something that Camus would call theatre of the absurd, a collective performance where everyone agreed to participate in an illusion, even while unconsciously knowing that it is just that, an illusion. The lucid person sees the tense faces behind forced smiles, perceives the anxiety disguised as joy, recognizes the existential emptiness that hides behind rampant consumerism. They see, and by seeing, suffer in silence. Camus taught us that lucidity is both a blessing and a curse. It is the capacity to see reality without the consoling filters that most people use to make life bearable. During Christmas, this lucidity becomes especially acute because we are surrounded by symbols that promise transcendence, supreme meaning, universal redemption, but which in practice reveal themselves empty of real substance. The lucid person observes families gathering not out of genuine love, but out of social obligation. They see gifts being exchanged not as authentic expressions of affection, but as mechanical rituals that fulfill pre-established expectations. They perceive that behind the celebration of Christ's birth exists a system that has transformed the sacred into commodity, that has converted spirituality into spectacle. But why does this lucidity generate silent hatred? Because the conscious person feels betrayed by the very society that should offer meaning and belonging. They see that Christmas has become a time of socially accepted lies, of collective hypocrisies, of false reconciliations that last only until January. The hatred is not directed at Christmas itself, but at the farce it represents, at the way society uses this date to mask its own contradictions. The lucid person hates having to pretend joy when they feel emptiness, hates having to participate in rituals they consider devoid of authenticity, hates being forced to celebrate, in a world that for the rest of the year systematically ignores the values that Christmas supposedly represents. Camus would speak here about the feeling of the absurd, that fundamental human condition where our need for meaning clashes with the apparent absence of meaning in the universe. At Christmas, this clash intensifies because we are surrounded by promises of ultimate meaning, of transcendent significance, of universal love. But the reality we experience contradicts these promises in a screaming manner. Lucid people feel this contradiction viscerally. They see the poverty that persists while others spend fortunes on superfluous gifts. They observe the loneliness that multiplies precisely in the season that should celebrate union. They recognize that the magic of Christmas is frequently a temporary anesthesia that prevents us from facing the real problems of the human condition. The silence of this hatred is perhaps the most painful aspect of the experience. The lucid person remains quiet because they know that expressing their perceptions would be seen as bitterness, pessimism, or worse still, as an attempt to spoil others' joy. They become involuntary accomplices of a celebration they consider false, participating externally while internally rebelling. This forced silence creates a sensation of profound isolation, an existential loneliness that intensifies precisely in a season that should combat loneliness. The conscious person finds themselves obligated to wear a mask, to play a role in a play they didn't write and with which they profoundly disagree. Camus would teach us that this experience, however painful it may be, contains within itself the seed of authentic freedom. The person who recognizes the absurdity of the situation has already taken the first step to transcend it. They no longer need to seek external validation for their perceptions, no longer need to wait for the world to become coherent with their expectations. Lucidity, even when painful, is preferable to illusion, even when comfortable. Seeing clearly is the first requirement for living authentically, and living authentically is the only dignified response to the absurd condition of human existence. But the lucid person also faces the challenge of not becoming cynical or bitter. Camus always insisted that recognizing the absurd should not lead to nihilism, but to a form of everyday heroism. The person who sees through Christmas illusions can choose to create their own moments of genuine meaning, can opt for authentic gestures of love and solidarity that transcend obligatory rituals. They can transform their lucidity into a source of compassion, recognizing that those who naively surrender to celebrations are also, in their own way, trying to find meaning and belonging in a confused world. Revolt, a central concept in Camus' philosophy, emerges as a natural response to this situation. Not the destructive revolt that seeks simply to deny or destroy, but the creative revolt that affirms authentic values in opposition to the false values imposed upon us. The lucid person can use Christmas as an opportunity to exercise this constructive revolt, creating their own meaningful traditions, establishing genuine connections with other people who also question social conventions, practicing gestures of solidarity that arise from real understanding of human needs, and not from artificial moral obligation. During this period, it is important to understand that the sensation of being outside the collective party is not a personal defect, but a natural consequence of having developed critical consciousness. Most people accept celebrations because they need to believe that something greater exists that gives meaning to existence, and Christmas offers this illusion in a seductive and socially approved manner. The lucid person, on the other hand, has already learned that meaning does not come from outside, but must be created internally through conscious choices and deliberate acts of life affirmation. Leave a comment telling us if you also feel this strangeness during Christmas. Write "I feel this too" if you recognize yourself in this experience. Your sincerity can help other people understand that they are not alone in this journey of lucidity. Sometimes knowing that others also see what we see is the first step to transform isolation into authentic solidarity. Camus would also remind us that freedom conquered through lucidity comes accompanied by responsibility. The person who sees clearly has the moral obligation to act according to this vision, even if this means swimming against the social current. They can no longer be content to simply criticize internally the falsities they observe. They need to find ways of living that reflect their authentic values. This might mean creating new family traditions based on emotional honesty, might imply refusing to participate in rituals they consider empty, might require courage to express their perceptions, even risking misunderstanding or rejection. The Christmas experience of the lucid person also reveals something fundamental about the nature of authentic happiness. The happiness that society promotes during Christmas is frequently a happiness of consumption based on acquisition of objects, on fulfillment of social expectations, on conformity with established standards. The conscious person intuits that this is not true happiness, but a superficial satisfaction that leaves the deepest existential questions intact. They seek instead a form of contentment that arises from lucid acceptance of the human condition, from autonomous creation of values, from construction of relationships based on mutual authenticity. The silent hatred that the lucid person feels during Christmas is paradoxically an expression of love for truth and authenticity. It is because they deeply value sincerity in human relations that they revolt against obligatory performances. It is because they believe in the possibility of genuine connections that they become frustrated with mechanical rituals. It is because they thirst for real meaning that they reject the artificial meanings offered to them. This hatred is, therefore, a form of fidelity to their highest values, a refusal to accept cheap substitutes for the most precious human experiences. The loneliness that accompanies this lucidity can also be transformed into a source of strength. Camus celebrated the figure of the solitary person who maintains their integrity even when everyone around them succumbs to collective illusions. This loneliness is not emptiness, but fullness, not absence, but intensified presence of oneself. The person who remains faithful to their perceptions even when this isolates them socially, is exercising a superior form of moral courage. They are choosing truth over popularity, authenticity over acceptance, integrity over forced integration. But it is crucial to understand that this position should not lead to contempt for others or intellectual arrogance. The truly lucid person recognizes that those who surrender to conventional celebrations are also trying to find their way in a difficult world. They develop compassion for those who still need illusions to bear existence, understanding that not everyone is ready or willing to face reality without filters. Their revolt is directed against systems that perpetuate falsities, not against people who are victims of these systems. If you've made it this far in this reflection, you probably recognize yourself in this journey of questioning and search for authenticity. Consider subscribing to the channel to become part of a community of people who also value deep reflection on human existence. Here you will find a space where your most honest perceptions are welcome, where it is not necessary to pretend joy when you feel complexity, where the search for truth is valued above social conformity. The transformation of painful lucidity into liberating wisdom does not happen overnight. It is a gradual process of learning how to live with integrity in a world that frequently rewards dishonesty. The lucid person learns to create their own meaningful rituals, to establish connections based on mutual truth, to find beauty in small daily authenticities. They discover that they don't need the approval of commercial Christmas to experience genuine gratitude, don't need obligatory rituals to express real love, don't need festive crowds to find true joy. During Christmas seasons, this person can choose practices that reflect their authentic values. They can opt for gestures of solidarity that arise from real understanding of human needs, not from guilt or social obligation. They can create moments of genuine connection with people who also value emotional honesty. They can use the period of reflection that the end of the year naturally provides to evaluate their choices, their relationships, their life projects, always with the courage to make changes when necessary. The lucid person also learns to value moments of silence and solitude as opportunities to encounter themselves. While others seek to fill every moment with activities and external stimuli, they cultivate the capacity to be present with themselves, to listen to their deepest thoughts, to honor their most subtle perceptions. This cultivation of interiority becomes a source of strength and clarity that sustains them during periods of greatest social pressure to conform. Camus would remind us that the absurd condition of existence is not something we should resolve, but something we must learn to dance with. Commercial Christmas and its falsities are part of this absurd condition, but our response to them defines who we choose to be. We can revolt in a destructive manner, becoming bitter and cynical. We can conform passively, betraying our own lucidity, or we can choose the third way, the creative response that transforms our clear perception of reality into the basis for a more authentic and meaningful life. This journey of lucidity during Christmas, however solitary it may seem, connects you to an ancient lineage of thinkers and individuals who chose truth over convenience, authenticity over popularity. You are not alone in your clear perception of social contradictions, not isolated in your search for genuine meaning, not wrong in resisting pressures to participate in celebrations that violate your personal integrity. Your lucidity, even when painful, is a gift you give to yourself and indirectly to the world, because each person who refuses to accept falsities as truths is contributing to the possibility of a more honest and authentic world. Continue walking with courage on this journey of awakening, knowing that your clarity of vision, even when inconvenient, is a form of creative resistance against a world that prefers the sleep of unconsciousness to the vigilance of lucidity.